Joe, have you ever noticed life is like being a roll of toilet paper?
How so?
You're either on a roll or covered in shit. Or dealing with shit. Maybe dealing with shit. Let's workshop that a little bit. Probably dealing with shit. So, Joe, you know how life is like being toilet paper?
I heard that.
You're either on a roll or dealing with shit.
Okay.
Did I tell you about my uncle who got fired from the bank?
No.
Old lady asked to check her balance, so he pushed her over. A little homage to Welcome Back, Carter. You know, let me tell you about my Uncle Mikey.
Right.
Fired from the bank.
Yep.
Hello, this is Jacques.
I'm Joe.
And welcome to Carnival Personnel. Joe, how are you?
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
It's been a while since we've been podcasting down here. It's been a while.
I'm just going to let you go. Just walk away. How have you been, my friend?
Okay. Well, I'm sure you've been fine and dandy these past 2 weeks, so we don't need to get into the nitty-gritty of...
We don't.
Okay.
We will get into a couple of things, but right off the bat, we were talking, and I stifled the conversation so you could tell us all together. It's been a couple of weeks since you've cut the cord. How's it gone? How's life without a DVD-R? Or DVR, sorry.
Yeah. How's life without DVDA? Well, I mean... DVR-free life is... It's... It feels like... the first time. It's weird, man. It's amazing how life-changing having a DVR was. A real game changer in planning your life. And now it's the same thing. Where, yeah, we do a lot of streaming, but there are live events that I have to kind of coordinate. I actually set reminders on my phone because we'll get into it later, I suppose. But The Good Place's final episode aired live on Thursday, and I wanted to watch it, but there's no reminder mechanism aside from my phone. So you know what I actually downloaded? A TV Guide app. The official TV Guide app. So that
if you got the TV Guide, what do you need the TV for?
Read the TV Guide. You don't need a TV. Lost Boys.
Lost Boys, yeah.
Actually, the only way I know that quote, I've never seen The Lost Boys, but I listened to a podcast called TV Guidance Counselor, and every single episode opens with that quote.
Yeah, it's great. It's a fun movie. It's, you know, we watched it. Sorry borrowing already. We watched it a couple months ago. It's one of management's favorite movies. Right. It's not that dated. It still holds up pretty good. And it's one of those movies where it's pretty much a launching pad. Everybody went on to much bigger and better things. I mean, it was huge.
Corey Feldman.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where is he now?
Honestly, I don't know. But he'll show up soon. But yeah, as far as my life goes without DVR, yeah, it's just weird. You know, it's kind of an inconvenience, but the money I'm saving,
which you've rolled over into, like, you know,
401k,
right?
Yeah,
right. Just
putting the kids' college money away. Finally, they're going to get a good education. You know, now that Daddy doesn't have his drugs,
so saving $100 a month times 12 months. So when your oldest son is about my age, you're going to be able to send him to Middlesex Community College.
Hey, one semester is better than nothing, isn't it?
God bless you.
What about you? Well, I don't know. What?
Nothing big. You know, nothing that we won't get into here. Yeah. But we'll start off, and we start off with deaths a lot. But it's been a while since we've dealt with a shocking passing. I was at my mom's last week when a bunch of people at my mom's house says, you know, Kobe Bryant just died. And I'm like, yeah, it's a hoax or whatever. You just, because I've never heard of things like a drug or an alcohol thing. Because if you're 40 and an ex-athlete and you're dying, the first thing you think of, it's a drug, alcohol kind of related, you know, thing. Did not have a helicopter crashing on the bingo card.
No, I mean it's a weird thing, and I was on Twitter just lounging around. Go figure. I was doing nothing on a Sunday, and I see it come up, and I'm like, "What? He helicopter?" Because it says in the headline, "helicopter crash," and then of course, you know, he and 4 other people died. And then he and 5 other people died. And then the next day, 8 other people died. And originally, apparently somebody from I think NBC News or ABC News reported, like national news, accidentally reported that all of his kids were on the helicopter. And then he got suspended. But you're talking about like hit you over the head kind of. It didn't impact me so much. I mean, it's impactful that somebody that big and notable and young just up and goes away in an instant because of a freak accident. But it didn't hit me, in the gut. Like Robin Williams, when he passed, that was like one of those what the fuck out of the blue kind of hit you in the gut moments.
But how old was he?
He was in his 60s.
Yeah, I mean, that's still young by today's things.
Right, but just the way, like, it's just, out of nowhere. Like, he wasn't hospitalized. He didn't have a terminal illness. We knew about his alcoholism and mental stuff, but we didn't know about the what was it, I forget what the dementia that he had. Anyways, I don't want to make this about him, but it's getting back to Kobe. The announcement was weird, and the tragedy is awful. And then the response on social media was even more complex.
And with the media, we live in the day and age where it's more important to be the first to report something than the most accurate. And that's where but the real gut punch came. It was, the real gut punch. You find out he's with his daughter. That's when it goes from being a tragedy to you don't like the guy, you don't whatever. It doesn't really affect you, but then you hear that on top of it, and
I know, and he was on his way with 2 other families to one of his Mamba Academy practices.
And so Joe and I, a couple things about Kobe Bryant. I grew up in the 80s living for the Celtics, and I always hate the Lakers. Joe came out to L.A., and he was out there for a year with me at the absolute height of Kobe and Shaq. And it was painful. It was absolutely painful. I mean, I wasn't a big basketball fan at that point. It wasn't like they were beating the Celtics at that time or anything like that. But just being swept up in the main. And it didn't matter. Like, the L.A. Kings weren't, there was no close second. The Dodgers, always have. But there was no close second to like the Lakers just owning that town and so pervasive. We actually worked into one of the sketches we were doing on a show about like the parades and stuff like that. And I will say this, what little I know about basketball, I've always felt truly that if Kobe and Shaq could have kept their egos in check, you're looking at 7, 8 championships.
A real dynasty. I
mean, they won 3, and then Kobe won 1 without him. Shaq won 1 without him, with different teams. But together, it's hard to, you think the big 3 with the Celtics and the Lakers had their big 3 and Michael, Scottie Pippen and Rodman. I mean, that was a 3. This was a 2-guy operation, and they were that absolute dominant. And it's just, I don't want to say it's a shame they couldn't keep it together because, they would have surpassed the record of titles that the Celtics had. Mm-hmm. But the other thing about Kobe, when I went on the tour with the guys from the Big 3 last year, most of those guys had played with or against Kobe and LeBron. All the guys were ex-NBA guys. And every time you went to a base, people always asked, is LeBron as good as Michael? Is LeBron in the category? Is he in the conversation? Is he, the Mount Rushmore? To a player, every guy on that tour said, dude, LeBron is not in the conversation. The conversation is Kobe Bryant versus Michael Jordan, not LeBron. And these guys spoke about Kobe in a godlike status. Like, if you don't know basketball, then if you don't know that, you don't know basketball, was their take on it. Because they said, it wasn't close. Kobe could single-handedly beat you. LeBron has always had to put a team together. I mean, he can get you close, but they all said, Kobe would have won 3 or 4 rings without Shaq. I don't know if that's true, but either way. And the thing about the helicopter is interesting because a lot of people, again, on social media, funny it being a toxic wasteland, were kind of skewing him for being an aristocratic elite, flying around LA in helicopters. And there's a point to that. And it's funny, but, somebody had posted an interview that Kobe did a couple years ago. I mean, he's still a really business person, and he's like, I was missing way too many of my kids' events, and it's true. You lived in LA. It takes an hour to 2 hours to go from the Staples Center to his house.
And think about it. Even like from an environmental standpoint, does it waste less gas to use a helicopter than to sit in traffic for 2 hours in a limousine?
One of our friends from F&H, and I think I told this story, he for years worked for a company where he was 75% travel. He worked out of the house one week, 75%, left on Sunday night, came home on Friday. A big company that had facilities around the world, literally. After years and years of doing that and having two small, kids, he's like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. I'm missing too much of my kid's life. And he had some, the company wanted to keep him, and their office, he lived in Hollywood, the office is in Calabasas. And he, runs the Excel spreadsheet, keeps track of everything. He's a methodical, really smart guy. He realizes after 2 or 3 months, he is actually seeing his kids less because it was an hour and a half each way. And it's a 30-mile drive. And it's an hour and a half each way. So he's leaving before they go to school, coming home after they go to bed. And when he factored in, well, at least 1 week of the year or 1 week of the month, he saw them. He knew he was, he was there when they got up in the morning. He put them to bed at night. And now, 3 weeks he was literally away from home on the road, but technically he had seen them more. And that's what LA traffic does for you. So, one of the other things, as you said, there was some people, I think a coach, another player and a dad or something like that on the plane, on the helicopter with them.
There was a local, former baseball coach from, New Hampshire and his wife and his daughter. And then one of the other coaches from the academy, a female coach, and I think her daughter and it's just in the pilot. And from what I learned about the helicopter itself, apparently this is like a helicopter from the early 90s that wasn't upgraded with the recommended detection systems since I think 2004 or 6 or something like that, where the instrument panel could have detected a mountain in fog. We all know how crazy this accident is and how maybe avoidable it was. But it just sort of it also kind of shines a light on just how used to things you can get, how lax you can get when you're doing stuff every day. And then maybe, I don't know if there was I don't know. I don't want to say the pilot became way too familiar and maybe too eager to please Kobe Bryant.
That's a factor, I bet.
Where that you just sort of go against your better judgment and go, yeah, I can make this.
Well, he was also rated and we've all become experts in the last week.
I know, right?
He was rated to fly in fog. And again, you lived in LA and smog and fog. Sometimes it's, it's normally sunshiny and roses there, but sometimes it's waking up in a dense London fog,
Yeah, right. So, and Stephen Colbert talked about this on his show because, his father and two of his brothers and his father died in a plane crash. Did you know this?
I did not.
Actually, yeah, they died in a plane crash in their mid-70s, and it was in similar conditions, but it was during landing, and apparently there was chatter between the two co-pilots because they were looking at an amusement park landmark, and they couldn't decide on what the name of it was, and it was called Caraway's. But they learned all this from the black box, and then they actually then used that information to put forth legislation saying that you can't, on descent now, pilots can no longer talk on the radio unless it's about the flight itself and the descent. You can't. So there was none of that distraction involved. But Stephen Colbert mentioned that there is no black box on helicopters.
Oh.
Like, helicopters don't have that. So there's no way to know what really happened before the crash, and no way to kind of learn from, well, what could we do to maybe prevent stuff like this from happening in the future. So hopefully something can be done where that does change things. But
and I guess Kobe's wife had an Instagram, and it's, you just can't imagine what that woman's going through. Burying a husband, burying a child, both of those absolutely gut-wrenching, horrible things, and to do it simultaneous. But she said, like, the foundation is going to take care of the other families on the plane.
Yeah, again, that's great. I mean, and this is obviously, like, he has 4 daughters, but this particular daughter of his was the one that he most saw the most potential to further the Bryant legacy in basketball.
Yeah, she was 13, and
Gianna.
So, we sometimes make joke, but it was shocking, and it's like, I'm one, I think, when Roberto Clemente, and I remember Thurman Munson again. I'm 6, 7 when that happens, but this is the first time something, in the sports world, that somebody that big, that famous,
Yeah, it's terrible.
And you think, like LeBron, he right out of high school. So he was famous for more than half his life. He was 41, but by the time he was 17, fun. One of the little fun facts I know, trivia facts I know about Kobe that a lot of people don't. You know he spoke fluent Italian.
I did, only because after the.
Oh, they've been talking about it.
Right, they actually show clips of him on talk shows.
Because his dad was a scrub NBA guy who went over and played pro in Italy, and he grew up in Italy.
Yeah,
I think that's
he spoke other languages too, like Spanish.
Really smart guy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it wasn't a dope. Like he was. He was a genius, or like a prodigy. He was, the whole thing. He was the whole package, and he's, it's. Oh well.
And I was working on a project. The woman who I did the Big 3 tour has done a lot of press with him. Her best friend is his press agent, and so I got the phone call a couple days later saying, "Hey, everything's on hold for the next." I'm like, "Why are you even calling me?"
Right. And that's the other thing is that L.A. is just a zombie land. This past week.
I mean, there's been blizzards. And people have been upset that, like, the Bruins haven't canceled games. And there's been big things. But for them to cancel the Laker-Clipper game this week was pretty huge.
I bet the Clippers were like, whew.
So that got that awful out of the way. All right. Good night, folks.
Yeah. There's nothing else that's awful that had happened in the week because we're not a podcast that dwells in the negative.
No, not at all. And when you think the name Joe from Carnival Personnel,
I think of Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves.
We turn off the heat when Joe's coming over because that radiant smile just brightens up the room.
See, I thought it was because of the
radiant,
the temperature of the takes that
the hot takes. Yeah, well, that's true. That's why we have to do it in the basement. So
we call it hot boxing down here.
So I will talk about something happy. The other night, and it was one of those things. Scrolling through, don't get to watch much stuff, and what little shows I watch with management. So. Nope, can't watch this. And I'm like flipping through, stumbled upon a documentary on Betty White. And it's one of those things where I love Betty White. You love Betty White. I had no fucking idea who Betty White was. And I feel ashamed that I didn't know, because I always talk about like Rosemary Clooney and some of the other, the women that the Carol Burnett's and before that, the
Imogene
Coca. But literally, like, when you realize that Imogene Coca looked up to Betty White, who was already a huge established star for 15 years before she came along, you're like, how did I not know that she invented television, basically?
Well, her last name's White and you're racist.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, no, you got it. and I did. I don't know how much you saw some of it.
I saw all of it.
Oh, you did?
I
Okay.
finished it after we spoke.
So I didn't know she was. And as soon as I see that she married a game show host, that she met on a game show, I'm like, oh, this is
Yeah, and I had known that obviously because I'm a dick and a nerd about game show history. But yeah, Alan Ludden, who was the host of Password and Password Plus, met Betty White, who was a TV personality, as a panelist on Password, and maybe it wasn't on Password. I think it may have been on Password. Where I think it was. And he, you can see in the documentary where he proposed to her for like a year, and every day for about a year they would still date each other, and he would jokingly propose to her and make so much of a deal about it that he eventually just wore the engagement ring around his neck on a necklace.
Well, she lived in L.A. I mean, they had a bi-coastal relationship when making a phone call was a big fucking deal.
They needed 3 switchboard operators just so they could have a conversation.
And flights, you know what I mean? You weren't flying back and forth. I mean, it was a laborious task, and yeah, but the fact that he just started wearing the necklace and it was a great story.
And then it's touching how she confided in her friend that she looked back on those 18 months of turning him down, and she was basically saying, well, I look back and then I think of all the time I've wasted, I lost, but I could have had more time with Alan. And then, and they had a lovely, they didn't have any kids. He died of, I think, lung cancer in like 1980. She's never remarried. And, she's just a big animal advocate. If nobody else knows that by now, I loved, and Joe and I talked about this, TV was, that's how long she was around. TV was in its infancy, and people were trying to figure out what this medium can be. And she was part of a radio show that they just said, why don't we just do the radio show on TV? You know, like every other, like Milton Berle and like Jack Benny, Amos and.
But it was 5 hours a day of live television. 5 hours a day,
of which 5 hours still exist. I don't know.
Right.
Who knows? All that stuff has been wiped by.
I mean, that's how. And then she ended up getting her own show. Was it her band leader who was black?
I'm not sure if it was. Maybe it was the band leader, right? But it was like a featured performer, if not the band leader, who was like one of the first black performers on television. That she, and it's the same old story where they got death threats or boycott threats from the South saying we can't put a black person on television, we're not going to air it. And she's like, well, that's fine,
don't air it.
Yeah,
the sponsors pushed her to get rid of the guy and stuff, and she's like, no, package deal. And she never touted that as look at her being this big civil rights. I mean, this is literally 25, 30 years before the big, 20 years before the big civil rights movement, 15 years. And she was just a person. And this wasn't a black person. This was a cast member. This was a friend. This was a talented person that brought something to the show. That's all she saw it as.
And then finally, to wrap up the Betty White thing, she was obviously on Mary Tyler Moore and The Golden Girls, 2 great, awesomely written shows. We might have to check out Hot in Cleveland. I think that was one thing that we missed. That came out in the early 2010s, I think. I think it was only like, I think it started in 2010.
TV Land, right?
Yeah, it was a TV Land original. But, I kind of like, I never really watched TV Land that much. And but looking at the clips, I'm like, they had like Carl Reiner and they had the Mary Tyler Moore reunion show, and they had Carol Burnett on, and it's just like, okay. And, and this cast itself had like Valerie Bertinelli and Wendy Malick and
that's others. The thing. When again, I always love when you don't, when I go off about like how great Bobby Orr is, I'm like, I'm a schmuck. Don't listen to me. Why don't you listen to like Gordie Howe or Wayne Gretzky talk about him? When you hear Carol Burnett talk about Betty White, and and these other just huge figures, not even Betty, not even Carol Burnett. I don't mean to make it just a woman thing. When you listen to Carl Reiner talk about her, like how lucky he felt to work with her, and again, I think she was just going to be in the pilot. She was just going to be in a one-off.
Yeah, in the pilot.
Had fun doing it. And it's like, sure.
And it was like a 5-season type show. So
Carl Reiner, same thing. He was going to guest star. They had such instant great chemistry. They're like, if he's willing to come back, and they're willing to, it's like. And my one of the things I loved about that documentary is Ryan Reynolds. When he was talking about how thin, it doesn't mean the material was thin, but how short the scripts for the Golden Girls were, because so much of their humor was just looks, back and forth and stuff.
Like the B. Arthur look and the Rue McClanahan look and Betty White and Estelle Getty. Yeah, and they actually showed a clip of the Golden Girls exempling that very thing. So, yeah. Betty White's really great. And she's still alive. She just had a birthday. She's like 98. So long live Betty White. And long live Ruth Bader Ginsburg while I'm at it.
I don't want to check Twitter now that we've said that.
Right. Oh, God. Oh, shit.
By the time this drops on
I'm going to have some editing to do.
Oh.
No, man. I'll make a time check on this. 25 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. So I've been telling Joe, I've been working on doing another tour with the military over the Middle East, bringing a friend of mine who's done a lot of huge movies. And I was very, very excited. And I called Joe, it was on Wednesday, and I said, hey, the tour's on. I'm going to have to do audience warm-up. I'm going to have to do 5-10 minutes of comedy before each show. I got to really get cranky on this stuff. And then Thursday, because as Joe said, this is a famous person that they want to fly 17 hours coach out of Los Angeles. I'm like, you can't fly a movie person out of, and then Joe's like, well, they need to save that money for Halliburton. I'm like, yeah, kind of. So that's been a roller coaster ride. I brought that up. Let's see. Awful, interesting. It's funny and an awful news story that I saw this week. Joe, do you realize how big the flag burning industry is in Iraq?
Is it a cottage industry or is it a full-blown?
It's a full-blown industry. I was reading this up online. I saw this online, and I looked at a couple other places that have been covering this. There's a flag-making company in Iraq that cannot keep up with the demands of
American flags,
Israeli flags, and there's another country I'm trying to think that they burn lots of. Maybe it's Iraqi.
Or maybe Iraqi.
Iran.
Right.
So this is Iranian. I'm sorry, it's an Iranian company that truly cannot. And they make all the flags by hand, and you see the whole process, and you just
why? Why do they put so much interest into making it by hand? You think they would just sort of Xerox the whole thing and just
because they're really nice flags. Because when they burn long. This is part of the article. It's like they make them so that they, it's like if you burn a piece of paper and you're walking down the street, a thin flag, it won't last that long.
Our flags are built to burn to last.
But seriously, I
good to the last char.
So
are they off-brand? Do they have 51 stars on the American flag? Are these the flags that you think they would be
the discount ones?
I thought it would be the flags that we make in America that we ship over there,
right?
Like the losing team's jersey kind of thing.
Yep. Well, I thought about that. I thought it's because I'm scrolling through and I see this picture and it's this long warehouse of these American flags. I'm like, what the. Oh, this is interesting. And then they have the same angle the day that they rolled out the Israeli flags and stuff like that. And I was thinking, well, you know what? Good for Cadet Bone Spurs to be really boosting the economy. It just happens to be the economy of the Iranian flag makers.
You won't see that documentary on Netflix anytime soon.
Why not?
And that sounds more like a Vice piece to me.
But I did. It shouldn't make me happy.
No, flag burning should not make you happy. What are you talking about?
I didn't think that one through all the way, did I? Oh man. So I'm surprised you came over without your medical mask with the coronavirus.
Well, idiot. Those masks are for the sick people. Healthy people aren't supposed to wear the fucking mask. The sick people. But that's why, and that was on the news like Friday. They had Good Morning America. They had like this, doctor that's always on there, and she's like, "I can't stress this enough. Don't buy masks if you're not sick, because there's a shortage now of masks for medical professionals, because like the flag burning industry in Iraq, the mask making industry in China is booming, so much so that there's a shortage, and it's panicking people buying crates and crates of masks, to just, keep away the viruses, but it's meant to not spread the viruses if you're sick.
So for years, we talk about this a lot on the podcast. We lived at Disney. We went to Disney Universal about once a week. And the two thing about the visiting Asian population at Disney, and that's a blanket statement, Asian. It doesn't matter if it's Korean, Japanese, Chinese,
Indian.
Whatever. Indian. My two big takeaways is, one, it's okay to come up and grab my blonde-haired, blue-eyed children and take pictures without asking, as if they're, caricatures walking around.
That's because they're not wearing their hairnets.
And two, so many masks. So many masks. And management and I, every time we saw like a group, we would always say the same thing. Are they wearing that for their protection or ours? Are they like, is this kind of a Chinese Make-A-Wish Foundation and all these people are about to die? Or are they worried about like, the germs here? But I mean,
maybe they were all in line for the auditions for The Masked Singer. Shut up, Richard.
but I did feel a need giving a shout out. I don't know if he still listens. He used to listen to the podcast. Our friend Zach, the Mexican with FNH. I sent a big group text out. It's like, Zach realizes the coronavirus isn't a bunch of broken down trucks coming over the Mexican border with skunk beer, right? So I can find it. But now, is this a real pandemic, or because
it's been deemed a global emergency by the Center for Disease Control, because it's a new strain and rapidly mutating virus that they don't have treatment for, and it's deadly, and it kills. It's probably killing people with weakened immune systems, like older people and stuff, but still, it's spreading so much so that there's with the flu, yes, we in America, I think 8,000 people or something a year die from the flu. And the flu is everywhere, and it's constant. But we have vaccines for the flu that there's a combat thing in place to combat the flu, whereas this new strain of coronavirus it's actually like an offshoot of SARS. And remember the SARS epidemic?
Was that before the swine flu and after mad cow, or was that was after
Ebola?
Ebola and
Zika.
Zika, that's the one I couldn't remember.
Don't forget about Zika.
I had bird flu.
That caused birth defects.
This was my bingo card. I had bird flu, swine, SARS, mad cow, E. coli, and Ebola. And what was Zika? Zika was the other one. Not Zika.
Yeah. So we had coronavirus and Zika virus. What is this? The fucking alcohol fucking virus place store.
So what's interesting is well that's one of two things. It's like, first of all, I was trying to get you out of the corner that you were painting. Is it a real thing? Is this going to stick around, or in a month are we going to be like, oh, remember how everybody was worried?
Well, that's the thing, is that okay, dummies. Yes,
that's me.
Yep. Yes, if there's going to be like a panic or whatever, or if there's like a lot of press, but yes, it's kind of a double-edged sword. The media is obviously going to hype this because it's a news story, and it's a global news story, and there is a legitimate concern. But it's almost like, well, the world didn't blow up. Well, that's because everybody was fighting against the world blowing up. Dummies. So if we don't make a big deal about it, how are we going to fight against it? So it's almost like, are we disappointed that we're not going to be Walking Dead in about a month? Shouldn't we be like, oh, well, it wasn't a big deal because they responded so quickly and they quarantined all the people that they could find. Like, there are actually, there's cases in America now because...
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we know this isn't all big medical mask? Just putting that scare out there, that big medical mask industry.
There is that. There's also a conspiracy theory that this was a virus, like I guess near the town of Wuhan, China, where this started. They say it started in like a food market, because they trade they sell like weird like wolf cubs and like pigeons and snakes and shit. And it's not exactly like rated A health board certified markets that we're talking about, but there's also the conspiracy theory that near this city there's a biochemical manufacturing plant that may have been engineering some sort of virus that got out. And the first thing you think of is like Outbreak.
Every movie I've seen.
Yeah, every panic movie about the end of the world that you've seen, or like the Umbrella Corporation. Right.
No, it's funny because Joe and I play these games and we watch these movies, and you see that all the time. It's like the Winter Soldier, Avengers, beginning of the movie, they stop this terrorist from getting this chemical out of this place, but while trying to stop him, a building blew up, like 10 people died. It's awful, but the vial that the terrorists were trying to get would have wiped out millions of people. So, but I'm still sticking to my Alex Jones guns that this is all big medical mass just pushing another disease.
I feel bad.
I think there's a lot of money to be made. You got the elastics that go onto the mask, so you got those people.
You got the rubber industry involved. You got the paper industry involved. You got the...
we are in a basement talking.
Right, exactly. And the Confederate flag is hanging up there for some reason. By the way, if you want to burn a flag, Exhibit A.
There you go.
We got plenty of those. We're going to export that. Think of them. Never mind.
That's part of our heritage, Joe.
All right,
heritage.
Heritage.
The same way that
Heritage.
The Heritage Foundation. Yeah, the same way that Swanseeker is part of German heritage.
Uh-huh.
I don't see a lot of statues to Anyways,
what are we talking about now?
We're talking about the corona. Last thing before we stop talking about the coronavirus. How many of these viruses and well, a couple interesting things, a couple points. It's like, are we going to find out it was like really a medical thing that went haywire? Are we going to find out with this disease, like lots of disease, somebody fucked an animal? Like, how many of these things literally have come about because some jerk off somewhere had to stick his dick in another species?
Couldn't have been the other way around. Couldn't have been
it could be.
What? Yeah. Why don't we do some more sensitivity training with the animals?
Right.
To
exactly.
Not impulsively fuck humans.
I was just going to go down a bad road. I'm good. What's interesting is, it's interesting, and it's also, man, they can get shit done when they want to. We talked about it a while ago, and I will make this 10 seconds. A lot of people are worried that China and emerging nations are giving these huge loans to build railroads and help with the infrastructure. The problem is, one of the problems, they're sending their workers over to do these projects, and they're not leaving. They're keeping them there. And a lot of people feel that's where the Chinese military is infiltrating. They're building these countries' infrastructures. No, it doesn't sound conspiracy theory.
No, but it sounds familiar.
Right. When you see them, a couple of these hospitals that they're building overnight to take care of 1,000, like literally, they broke ground last week with the goal of having a 700-bed hospital up and fully operational within a week. I mean, the engineering and the planning and the want to build something this quickly when you have to, it's stunning what they've gotten done.
But that comes at a price. I mean, the Wi-Fi there is terrible. I mean, have you seen... You just can't get the high internet speeds that these patients need. No, you're sitting around in bed.
No, I thank you for grounding me down. No, but I thought that's interesting. So as this podcast drops, it is Iowa Day, Joe. This is the
really. I thought it was pronounced Iowa.
One.
You don't get it.
You want me to go away? What was that?
No. It's a Music Man. I made a Music Man reference. Oh,
Wait,
God.
right here?
Yes.
In River City?
Yeah. With a capital P.
And that rhyme. No, that was capital T. And that rhymes with P. And that stands for
pool or pussy, whatever.
You know me. You down with OPP?
Anyways, Iowa.
Everyone laughs at me. Yeah, so it is primary day. This is the one time every 4 years that people give a fuck about the flyover state. Thoughts? Predictions?
I feel bad for Elizabeth Warren, Senator Sanders, and Klobuchar. Well, not so much Klobuchar. I mean, but these senators that were tied up with the impeachment, which we'll get to later, and how well that's going. But they didn't get a chance to, do the stumping that they needed to do the past week or two because of that. But honestly, okay, fine. It's a weird system we have. The Iowa caucus thing is very cabalish.
Weird. Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, like, what are the origins of the Iowa caucus?
I know. This is all I fucking know. I'm tired of fucking undecideds. Period. The end. It's like all the polls you see, it's like, oh, Biden's at this and this. But, 40%, are still undecided. I said, fuck you. There's no way on like the week before, there's been people, if you want to run for president, you go to Iowa a year before. You literally, Iowa and New Hampshire, you start setting up offices right away. And you have ground people. You're doing town halls. I mean, sometimes a couple years out. I don't think Bernie ever stopped. And I mean this. Since 2016, Bernie's made regular stump things to Iowa. It's like for some reason, that's a big thing. But when you see the polls and you see like, oh, this is what they are head to head against, Blotus and all this stuff. But like so many hours, there's no way that 40. I really think it's just people. It's like, yeah, let's just fuck with people. There's no way 40% of people.
I think those are just people who are not going to vote.
Right. Just say I'm not going to vote. I don't care.
Right.
I like Joe. I don't give a fuck. But this whole undecided thing.
But that's kind of the Democratic Party right now, isn't it? Oh. I mean, it's this weird thing where, you have to vote for if you're a registered Democrat, you absolutely have to vote in the primary. No fucking exceptions. I mean, get off your ass, get out and vote when the primary comes to your town. But
unless you're going to vote for Tulsi.
Right.
Then,
even if you vote for Tulsi, just so we know where to find you.
No, I think if you are going to vote for her, you got to get in your car. You got to go. You got to speed to the polls.
Should they wait for the secondary?
And just, but on your way there, make sure you're not wearing a seatbelt and you're turning into oncoming traffic. So.
That's the kind of stand-up we were going to miss on the on your world-class tour.
But seriously, I think Biden, wins. I mean, if you finish at 4th, 5th, or 6th, I think you're pretty much done. So I think Bernie and Warren have to go 2 and 3, but I think Biden has it because he's, like you said, he's been there nonstop.
Does Bloomberg stick around anyway because he's got the money?
Yeah.
Steyer, same thing.
Same thing. So, I mean, they will stick around because they can. I mean, here in Massachusetts, I don't see a lot of Bernie and Warren stuff, but you can't turn on. Just watching The Good Place the other day. I think every commercial break had a Tom Steyer
or Mike
Bloomberg thing. In a state they're not going to win.
Yep.
They're not going to come close. I don't think Elizabeth Warren is very popular here.
I wonder if those are national ads and not local ads. Like I wonder how big their campaign reaches. Anyways, yeah. So with this, it'll be interesting. But again, can we all agree that if you're a Democrat, you just get behind whoever the fuck the nominee is?
You're talking to. I'm sad to say you're only talking to one group. You realize that, right?
Yeah.
You're only talking to Bernie supporters. And in just a recent poll the other day, it was 90+% Warren supporters. 80 high 80% Biden supporters. The only one that wasn't mid 70s and up, but most of them were 80s. And again, Elizabeth Warren's base had the highest percentage of will you support another candidate if your candidate doesn't win. it was like 52% of Bernie's said they would. And again, where we have the person in the White House, we do based on 75,000 votes spread out over 3 states. Yeah, those Bernie bros who sat this one out, or the Bernie bros who, either voted for shit face or just sat out. Yeah, it's hard to, and again, I'm not blaming Bernie, but it's hard not to say that wasn't a big contributing factor, that in those 3 Midwest states, if he was really, adamant. It's like, Hillary and I are on the page 90% of the time. I'm 100% behind her. And a lot of people said the same thing. It's like, yeah, well, if Hillary won and she's an incumbent, that's 8 years. Can Bernie really run for president in 8 years from now? Or was Bernie not 100% getting behind her because he wants to run again in 4 years? And I'm not saying, just like big mask pushing the coronavirus. I'm not saying that. But it is really scary that as of this week, all the national polling says that barely over 50% of Bernie supporters are willing to get behind who was ever at the top of the ticket.
And maybe that's the downfall of democracy, is that because we can't. You know what? Maybe there is too much diversity in the Democratic Party. I was thinking about this. The Republican Party reminds me of the quote from Family Guy, like early on. It's like, it doesn't matter, where we come from or how we grew up, as long as we all have the same religion, everything will be okay. And think about it. It's just like, there's like this hive Borg mentality among most Republicans. They're of a certain ethnicity. They're of a certain religion. They're of a certain financial class, or aspire to be of a certain financial class.
There you go. Bingo. Bingo.
Yeah. And they just sort of like, it makes it easier for them to be more, and they all kind of have the same like fears, like the same prejudices.
Black people.
Yep. And black babies.
Yeah. Oh, the brown people aren't that much better.
Right. I know. I don't know what I'm talking about. But whereas in the Democratic Party, we're so fragmented. Where it's just like, I don't like that TV show. I like this TV show. We both like TV. Don't get me wrong. We both like.
I like ER.
Yeah.
You like Chicago Hope.
Yeah.
But and we won't unless you want to, throw it instead of playing a song at the end of the podcast. Put this bit on, and we will both. At Emo Phillips to say thank you for it. Emo Phillips's thing about trying to save somebody who's going to commit suicide on a bridge, and he's trying to talk him down, and he's there with the guy, and it turns out that both of them are Irish of heritage, and both their grandfathers, come from Northern Ireland, and both their grandfathers, came from the same city, and turns out the same block and the same neighborhood, went to the same elementary school, but this one goes to the Presbyterian, First Presbyterian Church on 7th Street, and the other guy's grandfather went to the Second Presbyterian on Bleecher Street. Die, you heathen! And pushes him off. And it's like,
why do we need to play the bit? You just did it.
And that's what it
beat
is.
For beat, perfectly.
I talk to my sons all the time about, religion and, and one of the reasons, I believe the way I do is it's hard for me to support organized religion as a whole. There's so many good things about it, sense of community, this or that, the charity work that a lot of them do. But most of the wars, I think all of the wars before oil was discovered, and even most of the wars now, when you realize, wait a minute, the Old Testament is, Christians and the Jews share a Bible. And when you realize that even in the Quran, lots of stuff that's in, especially the Old Testament, that Jesus is a prophet in Islam. It's like you go through these things and it's like, wait, you're going out of your way to find the 10% we don't see 100% on versus, and that's it. So you're fighting wars over the 10% of the Bible or the Quran that you don't agree with. Where in the Democratic Party, it's like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie, and we talked about this last time, are friends. This thing was created by the media. Yeah, they were mad at each other, but they've been friends for long periods of time. That I really believe Bernie's closer to Elizabeth Warren's politics and policies that he was Hillary. And I think he would get more behind Elizabeth Warren. And the same thing. I think they are so much in more lockstep together than any other two people out on the campaign right now. But it's like when you hear the bullshit it's gone both ways, more through their supporters, at war and stuff like that. So we'll find out by the time this podcast, drops, hours after it, we'll know who won Iowa. And
so the bottom line is what, it's better to try to find the commonalities in people versus, what divides you. It's like a movie that I saw. It was about one man versus another man, and they were just about to. One was about to do another one in. They were fighting forever. They were,
Martha!
They were, you son of a bitch. I was
doing it.
I know.
Wait, why don't you do your self-indulgent theater? Can you do it?
Oh, I don't know. Actually, I don't know the scene that well. I just know that one person found out that the other person's mother's name had the same name as his mother.
He spent a long time planning and plotting to kill the other guy.
Right.
And went to great expense. We're talking tens of millions spent in order to kill this man.
And he didn't bother to do a Google search. It's like a little Wikipedia. Oh, all right. Son of Martha Kent and Clark. Don't tell me Martha Kent and Pa Kent, who's also known as Wayne Kent, Jimmy Kent.
Yeah, that's Jimmy Olsen. That is the Wayne family. And Clark Kent. The first name Clark is Martha's maiden name, and I cannot remember what Pa Kent's name is.
Oh, look at this! I've stumped this.
No, I know what it is. And it's right there. I won't think about it. We'll come back. Let me think about something to distract me so I can come back to it and think about it. When you talk about when I talked about flag burning a few moments ago, what the Republicans have done is they've gone out and printed up like this company in Iran that's making flags just to burn. The Republicans spent all last week printing out copies of the Constitution just so they can burn them. This week, honestly, Joe, as much as we're joking about it, it might be the lowest point in our constitutional history in our life, in my lifetime. And I 100% don't think that's being hyperbolic.
I think they just passed a new amendment for the Constitution where it's just simply a shrug emoji.
I mean,
it was just like, eh.
So everybody knows it. We won't have to get into it. The long story short, what happened this week, we knew what was going to happen. The Republicans completely buried, they had a sham. You can't call it a trial. They had hearings that it wasn't a trial. The only trial in U.S. history with no documents and no witnesses. And the Republicans who blocked every witness we know what it is. They blocked every witness and then said, well, the Democrats should have had these witnesses here. They should have put a case together. They should have had John Bolton beforehand. Of course, John Bolton, credit where credit is due. The fact that he's selling this book and that he is getting headline news every single day for weeks because he publicly said he would not honor a subpoena from the House. And, of course, in the House knew to get a subpoena upheld and all that, it would have taken months, literally not days, not weeks, months in order to get John Bolton in. And it would have just dragged the investigation and all that stuff. It would have killed it. Then as soon as it gets turned over to the Senate, and we've talked about this podcast, if they subpoena me, I will come in. You don't need a subpoena. Just come in. Like any of the House managers can bring you to the floor. You know what I mean? You don't need to be subpoenaed. But he said he'll come in and talk. He won't fight a subpoena if the Senate subpoenas him, knowing that they weren't going to. So he can have it both ways. He can say, well, I'm not just willing to tell my story to sell books. I'm willing to come in, and people, fuck him. If you have something to say, and then the dripping out. I'm going to summarize the entire week of awful with Adam Schiff's best moment in the trial, in the hearing. You can't call it a trial, Jacques. In the hearing, when he says you can't make this up. On Thursday, down the street in a separate case that the House basically, has a court case going, trying to get a ruling on whether House subpoenas, if not honoring a House subpoena, is an impeachable offense in of itself. And the Department of Justice made the argument in federal court, literally blocks away from the Senate. The Department of Justice, who the lawyers representing the president work technically for the Department of Justice, said, yes, of course, the House has to remain, the House has to have, I'm trying to think exactly how it was said, but the Department of Justice lawyers argued that the House has to have impeachment power over subpoenas. Otherwise, there's no point of them and how important it is. The same Department of Justice making an argument at the Senate trial that you can't, impeach somebody for colluding with a foreign. I mean, all these things, and now it's just like you can't make it up.
Right, and then the Alan Dershowitz's fucking defense about how if the president is trying to investigate one of his opponents and is seeking foreign intervention to do so, and he believes it to be in his in the country's best interest, then it can't be an impeachable offense.
Right. So I believe,
or as Nixon said, if the president does it, it's not against the law.
Right, and now not only is the guy who occupies the White House, I can't even say the word. Hear his lawyer is flat out saying that if the president feels him remaining president is what's best for the country, whatever he does in order to make that happen is completely legal. Mm-hmm. And by acquitting him, by not even having a real trial, you just gave him license to, he's already Russia if you're listening, China if you're listening, and there was a slimmer of hope. Collins, finally showed some kind of a backbone and voted for witnesses. Romney, which we had hoped he would. They needed two others. And Alexander, I forget what state he's from, flat out had a press conference saying, yes, 100% he did this. Insert shrug emoji. Like, he goes, yes, he did this. And if we call the witnesses are going to say, yes, he did this, but we're going to acquit him anyway. So why are we wasting? That was their whole thing. Why are we wasting our time? And Adam Schiff pleaded for just give us a week. There's been 30 impeachment hearings that the Senate has had in its history. Not one of them hasn't had witnesses or documents from the other side. And in this impeachment hearing, the whole thing from the Senate, not one document has come over from the White House, not one witness.
Well, Republicans out there voting for Trump, you were right. The system is rigged. You were right. The system is rigged. In your favor.
And here's the senators, the ones who are retiring especially, like, you got nothing to lose. But yet you are completely abdicating your power to the White House by doing this. And here's my biggest fear. And I know it's going to happen. This, Jacques Stradamus. I don't know, that doesn't really roll off the tongue. They lose the White House in November. And Mitch McConnell brings a bill to the floor to make what they did, you can never do it again. And they will vote on it. They will use a 53 to 47 vote saying, in the future, you need a supermajority. You need 60 votes in order to pull the same shenanigans again, knowing it will never happen again. Yep. They will completely change the rules for the incoming president, giving as much power back to the Senate before the Democrat, hopefully President Warren, takes over. But as of right now, we are living in a monarchy.
I would say an oligarchy. And that, my friend, is a hot take.
But here's what's not making the news at all. At all. The Department of Justice, again, the big topic today, who just a couple weeks ago, when Mike Flynn was trying to rescind his guilty plea to non-guilty, and the Department of Justice, who 6 months ago had recommended no jail time, just fines and a probation, had a falling out with him, and they have now recommended 6 months in jail. Last week, very quietly, petitioned the courts again to give him no jail time. And it's not making any... Here's the thing. Here's why Mitch McConnell loves the president. Here's why Lindsey Graham loves the president. Two things. All the federal judges that are getting pushed through that nobody's talking about. Lifetime appointments. This administration in 3 years has appointed more lifetime federal judges than any administration ever. More than Roosevelt did in his 4 terms. More than any 2-term president. They're steamrolling him through. Bad judges, 4 lifetimes. The big shiny thing over here, the tweet of the day is keeping it out of the news cycle. And that's what they absolutely love most about him. Same thing like this. I mean, Mike Flynn getting a pass, like what Barr is doing, what Pompeo is doing and stuff like that. It might bubble up and make a news cycle if by news cycle you mean an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. But one tweet comes up and nobody is talking about Mike Flynn getting a pass now from why all of a sudden did Barr order that Mike Flynn get a pass? Because if the president pardons him, it becomes a bigger thing and it stays in the headlines longer. But if Barr says to the Department of Justice, no, you're not going to give him 6 months. You go in and tell the judge you want no time. Yeah, it maybe comes out. It's maybe a headline story in CNN for a half hour before, one of these crazy shit things happen. And that's why they love him, because he's the big shiny thing that constantly lets them kick the shit out of the Constitution.
Third reason they love him, they look really skinny standing next to him.
Yes, they do. Good. Good call. Good call. Oh, you are the smart, sexy one. Do you have a self-indulgent theater?
You know what? I don't.
For a second, I'm like, oh, man, he's been thinking about stuff.
I'll take requests. I don't know. I'm in an up mood. Can't you tell?
Yes, I can. Well, you can't do the Martha scene from. Oh, by the way, that was Batman vs Superman 2018.
A classic.
Fantastic. I love it. It's one of those movies where the extended version. It's like
it's a miniseries, for Christ's sake.
Well, all the stuff that people complained about. Well, this didn't make sense in the movie. It's like, okay, this scene had explained it, but they
insisted on cutting it.
It insists upon itself. You know what? It's been a while since we've done anything Paul Lynde related. Do you think you could?
What do you want
man,
to do?
let's call something up here.
Call him up. Oh
Let
man,
me see if I can.
I can plug my phone in and pipe in some tunes. I don't know. Am I supposed to be singing something? I guess I'm singing something.
You want to sing something, or do you want to maybe
read something?
Read a couple paragraphs of the Constitution.
That's right. Right. The preamble.
There we go. Go with that. Go with that.
Oh man, the Constitution preamble. Is there such a thing? I like how constipation comes up in the Google search before Constitution. Hold on a second. I'm hearing some crackles here. Okay. Let me see.
So here it is. Paul Lynde reading the preamble of the Constitution.
Eventually. It's not very long. It's a very preamble's pretty short. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
Except the Jews.
Except those Jews. Oh, they're the reason I don't get any work. Right, Gilbert? Wait a minute, you're one of them. Whatever.
It's been a while since you've done a Paul Lynde.
Yeah, sure.
Are you making some notes there?
I'm just writing down
Hang
Paul
yourself.
Lynde kills the Constitution.
No, that was done this week, but it is. It's truly, and what again, the House representatives went up there with witnesses. Well, not with witnesses, with statements, with facts, with concrete evidence, and truly, the Dershowitz went up there with, who cares? The get over it or
Liberal icon.
the Biden. That whole smoke show. Well, maybe we'll let you have witnesses if Hunter Biden comes in. It's like, what does that have to do with this?
Where's the whistleblower?
Right. It's like, oh, no, I'm not doing it. Not doing it. Okay, on to sport.
Okay.
Two quick things.
Uh-huh.
Super Bowl was yesterday. I didn't watch it. I don't know if you watched it. I really don't care. I don't hate the Chiefs. I've worked with the Chiefs before, the organization for games, really nice people.
We won't even dignify the Super Bowl by announcing who the winner was.
We won't, will we? Jimmy G, like nothing against him. That's that small thing that says, I lived for the 49ers growing up. I love Joe Montana. But, right now there's a tie between the Patriots and 49ers for the most wins in franchise history. So they break that tie with 7. But I really don't care. I'm not, I'll watch the commercials the next day. You've already seen the best commercial of the Super Bowl so far.
Mr. Peanut?
No, Not even close. Not even close. Come on.
Was it Betty White and Snickers?
Chris Evans.
Oh, the smart pie.
Sorry, your bigness. Stop being a smarty pants.
That's a ghost car.
I love that so much. I did.
If you haven't seen it, it's a Hyundai Smart Park commercial where you have 3 legendary Bostonians, Chris Evans, Rachel Dratch, and John Krasinski, all talking in their best Boston accents. I think Chris Evans nails his the most.
Well, recently, management made me watch. Chris Evans goes on Kimmel sometimes with his brother, and they do this game like, which embarrassing story they're going to tell. Like they put noise-canceling headphones on the other one and says, and Chris Evans started laughing about something, and he started to talk, and the accent came out hard. Like, oh man, somebody has worked really hard to lose that accent. It wasn't Goodwill Hunting, but there was, you knew exactly where he grew up.
Yeah.
So
I showed that commercial to my sons, who don't really have an appreciation for it because all they do is they live on their computers. They don't even know what Boston accents sound like, man. They're that far removed from their Bostonian heritage.
They've met my mother.
Right, okay, true. They've met my sister, too. But then that led me down the rabbit hole of Rachel Dratch on SNL. And I had to show them Debbie Downer. Like, they hadn't seen Debbie.
My boys got into Debbie Downer a little while ago.
Well, it's official. I can't have children.
If I call my little guy in here right now, he will sing the theme song with such passion.
As Paul Lynde?
And guest. I haven't done that good a job at parenting, but yeah, she was great.
I also had to show them the most Boston-esque character that Rachel Dratch played was Zazu, the woman next to Jimmy Fallon. You know what I'm talking about? Where they're being recorded by their friend. You don't know who I'm talking about? Noma! You are.
We don't talk about that.
All right. Oh, what?
We don't talk about that.
Oh. Am I missing something?
Yeah.
Let me think about that.
No.
Okay.
We'll talk about it after.
Oh.
But that That's a real big nerve for me, and I thought we've talked about this before.
Oh, really? No, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Oh man,
and the fact that the last episode that they did, they asked the camera guy,
"Did you get that?
Where did you get it?" And he jacked it from the Lexington Access cable station.
Oh, yeah, I gotta.
And literally,
you make some leaps that I just sort of.
I know.
I nod my head and say yes to because I love you.
But if they said we got it from the cable station, but where they actually said the Lexington Access cable station.
She grew up in Burlington.
Yeah, dude, that literally was and look. There, you know, there's a couple other things like that we've literally had before. You remember the guy from Talk Soup,
yeah,
and what Joe and I are talking about is we've literally had a couple times some really big people steal stuff, and no, I'm not even kidding. A sitcom taken by somebody famous. You know, we like one day this guy comes to our office from Talk Soup and. Was telling us we have to come right for him. And then the next week, like, I got 100 phone calls from people who I got hundreds of phone calls, maybe not hundreds, dozens of phone calls from people getting off the ice on a Friday night hockey. My phone blew up. It's like, oh, are you guys writing on the Soup now? I saw your skits on there. He took a bunch of skits, did shot for shot, line for line remake, and then called us the next week saying, "Oh no, I'm not stealing. I'm just showing you how cool your stuff would look, on E if you came and worked for us." It's like, but yeah, no, and look, there were similar characters. I mean, it's no, you know what I mean. Those are such Boston tropes that they had. But that day when they set that line, I was like, oh, you got to be killing me.
You don't attribute that to just parallel thinking.
Well, no, it could be. I did always attribute it to parallel thinking
Lexington.
Until so Joe and I had very similar characters for years, and it
wasn't for years. By the way, the characters we did were when we were in L.A.
Right.
We did that in L.A., but it didn't air. It didn't air.
But a lot of those characters and those kind of ideas. I mean, it was really funny because we forgot how much. A lot of that stuff, like Ross's friends, or there was other people who years later would see because they ran those skits for those shows forever, and other places. It's like the fact that it got picked up in Cambridge and stuff like that, because at one point Ross was like, some friends of mine saw, you playing a character called Dr. Ross Salowich, from Harvard. Anyways, but the commercial itself was great.
The commercial itself was great. Although you did do that commercial back in 2005. So I just,
But I predicted smart cars, smart park.
Anyway,
and you can edit all my ranting out.
No.
So the last thing I'm going to say about football.
Yes.
And Tom Brady, I'm not doing it. I'm not spending the next month, the next 2 months, the next week. Is he leaving? Is he staying? He's gone. 100%. Whether he goes to the Raiders, which it looks like, whether he goes to the Titans, I'm not even following. I just see the headlines and I pass it.
You didn't see the picture that he put up?
Yeah, you can't. Can you not have seen the picture? Is there a way of not having seen that? Like literally, I unfollowed maybe 30 Boston writers and Patriot, and NFL things right after the last game of the season. I don't think I unfollowed these people before I pulled out of the parking lot of the bar we went to that night. But if I'm friends with somebody who follows somebody, I'll see stuff. But you can't not see that picture. And it's like, dude, it's like the Tom versus Time thing, and it's like, and doing the Paul Rudd thing. You can't not know about it. Yep. I will say, Tom Brady's childhood hero is Montana, and Montana came out this week saying, "Don't fucking do it, Tom. I mean, you're good. You got a couple more years, but going to another team and another system is a lot hard." Right. Yeah, because he said, I went to Kansas City. I got him to when Montana went to Kansas City, it was different. He was forced out. But he went to Kansas City, for the first time in like a decade, he got them to a playoff game. You know, he had a couple decent years in Kansas City, but it's like, it's a completely different system, coaches, all these things. It's a lot harder than you think. You know, of course, it really worked out for Peyton Manning. It really, really worked out for Peyton Manning when he went to Denver. Again, different situation. You know, they had Andrew Luck. They couldn't keep him. It made sense for both sides to move on. But I'm not going to spend the next 20 podcasts talking about, is he going to stay? Should they keep it? Fuck it. If he goes, he goes. It was an amazing run. It will never happen again in sports. Not in football, not in hockey. This run that they did of 19 years of absolute dominance will never happen again. If he goes somewhere, I will wish him the best of luck up until he plays the Patriots. I hope he goes, if he goes somewhere, he wins 10, 11 games and you know, proves that he can play late and all that stuff. You know, when he plays the Patriots, I hope it's a close game that he loses. Like, there will be no split loyalties, you know. And it's a pox on all their houses. This is on Kraft. This is on Brady. This is on Belichick. Everybody knew, including Tom Brady's father, like 4 years ago when he gave that big interview, and his father said it won't end well. Like Tom's going to want to play until he can't play, and they're going to have to drag him off the field. And you know, Bill, and he called it out. It's like, you know, Bill does not, as much as Bill lives for the history of football, he doesn't give a fuck about what you've done for him. It's what you can do for him going forward, and that's how it should be. You know, so but the whole gameplay and stuff like that. Nope, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to stop now and wish everybody the best.
I wish you would not talk about things more, and actually not talk about it. We spent 5 minutes not talking about Tom Brady.
Well, I'm putting it out there that I'm done talking about it. So unless something happens, a trade happens or whatever, but I'm not going back and forth the why and the minutia and all this stuff. I saw the photograph. We saw that. It is what it is. Yep. Moving on to video games. Beep, bop, big video game things, Joe.
Don't hit the table.
Why? How can I do my Khrushchev if I don't
pop the table, man?
A couple things. I sent you the screen grab the other day. I went to play Tetris on my phone. Did you see that?
I heard that EA turned off Tetris, or is turning off Tetris as of April 2020. Yeah.
Hey, maybe you should read that as
I'm
Paul
not reading
Lynn.
it as Paul Lynn. Important announcement. Hello, fans. We have had an amazing journey with you, but sadly, it is time to say goodbye. As of April 21st, 2020, EA's Tetris app will be retired and will no longer be available to play. Kindly note that you will still be able to enjoy the game and use any existing game items until April 21st. We hope you've gotten many hours of enjoyment. Thanks for your money, sucker. And he put the kisses here.
Right. That's big news in my world. How will I be able to take a shit without playing Tetris?
You're gonna have to play. You're gonna have to download Schmetris, which is in no way affiliated with the game Tetris, but looks an awful lot like it. That's the real danger in digital video games going forward in the future. Everything eventually will be on digital, as far as video games, movies is concerned. The danger in that is the ownership and the longevity of having the item that you once had. You know, it's like with music, it's like with movies. You know, people would buy DVDs and rebuy albums and this and that, but you at least had something to go to. And then, yes, the technology would move on where it would make antiquated what you once bought, and then you would just upgrade to something new. But with digital stuff like this, where it's so reliant on the server and the property holder to actually maintain that property so that end users who paid them money, you're not buying it. You're leasing it for a indeterminate amount of time. You're leasing the experience until they say, you know what, we're done. It's all over, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's, I mean, you know, laugh all you want at. Oh, yeah. I wasn't talking about our podcast. I meant laugh all you want at me, like, you know, having these ancient video games and stuff. At least if I want to play Tetris, if I really want to play Tetris, if the zombie apocalypse happened and all that's left, if there's like an internet apocalypse,
right?
I can still plug in a Nintendo and play my Tetris.
I don't laugh at that because, before I left LA, I took a couple hundred DVDs and loaded them. Like there was a couple services. You put them in your laptop, your computer, and embedded in there is a code that you could upload it to a company that basically it was a pre-cloud type thing, a couple of things. And so you didn't need physical media anymore. Like if you could prove that you had this, the physical disc, you could load it on this and watch it anywhere. You could access, kind of like how Apple TV works now. Yeah, that company went out of business, and I gave away all the DVDs I had. I've since bought maybe 30 movies.
Bought's not a word. We're playing Scrabble at the same time. Bought is not a word.
I bought. But I did same thing. I at one point along I've lost my iTunes before, and I've had it recovered. But just recently, I'm like, I'm sure I have more than 4 Modest Mouse songs. I'm pretty sure I've had every album, and then I loaded them in this, and I put them back on a hard drive. I don't have those discs anymore, and I said discs. And
no, you didn't.
I know I didn't. I didn't. But literally,
I'm isolating that, by the way.
That's okay.
That'll be our first recurring drop. Yeah.
I don't have those discs anymore, and I don't have any less either. So gone. No, I've never. I mean, it's the exact opposite. No one has ever come into your basement and said, "Oh my God, Joe, what a loser! Look at all these games."
You haven't.
They've
met my wife,
said
then.
The first part of the line had nothing to do with the games and the paraphernalia and the collections. Because seriously, it's that kind of hard media now that. Yeah, I'm less inclined to sign up for. I mean, I love my Apple TV. I love that I can access it from my phone or wherever else to watch these movies. I've bought 10 that I bought, but yeah, it does. It kills me how much of that stuff is gone. But with Tetris and EA losing its license or whatever, I wonder if it's one of those things where you periodically hear it, like Comedy Central its deal is coming up with Comcast, and Comcast wants to charge more or give them and Comedy Central has all these commercials. It's like, oh, our dear Cartoon Network subscribers, sorry you're going to be losing our service, but we're not going to be on this platform. And it's a negotiation tactic back and forth, And when I saw that, I'm like, oh, is it that, or is it?
It could be. I mean, it could just be. Yeah, I mean, who knows? It could be that everything's an expense, and it's like it's a business decision. They think, well, is it worth keeping this service up if the sales are dropping?
Who cares? 6 months later, wake up, little Susie.
Yeah, but you know what? That's sort of like it's an example of how. Everything is fleeting and nothing is permanent and nothing lasts forever.
Except this podcast and our love.
Except in Tennessee. But, much like life, Jacques, all things must come to an end. Speaking of life coming to an end. Oh, you want me to still talk about video games? Or
Sure.
I'm playing Doom on my computer now.
On the computer?
Well, that's Doom. Yeah. I mean, it's a computer game. Doom is
okay. Well, no, the
not
the guy.
The PS4. I'm talking about the old versions of Doom, like the '90s versions of Doom.
Are they updated or are they?
They are updated. Yeah, there's actually. I just got into it last week. There are like modern, what they're called source ports. Basically, they're modern programs for modern computers that will play the old Doom files from the 90s. And then for the past 25 years, Doom is 25 years old, by the way, the Doom has this mechanism where the fans can modify and create their own Doom maps and upload them to the internet. And with this program, you can use... Thank you for catching my burp. You can use this program to play like modern and updated versions of Doom. Like they've done programs where they take the original Doom graphics, but then they update them to like 60 frames a second. They add more blood. They add like better sound effects. Cooler weapons. So it's really revamped.
Is it the same size or is it a bigger fucking gun?
It's a you're right. It's a BFG 9000, baby. So I've been playing that, and I was actually toying with the idea of maybe buying a new computer, because the computer that I have right now is a 2007 iMac.
It's 13 years.
13 years old, and the hand-me-down laptop from my wife is from 2013, and that's what I'm using now as my modern computer. So I was like, maybe I'll buy a new Windows computer. I was like looking at it, I was pricing it out. I was like, this, I think I could swing this. And then I get a medical bill the other day, and it's the exact amount as the computer I was thinking of buying. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck me. Oh, no, I can't, because if I fuck myself in my ass, it'll get stuck, and then I'll have to go see a doctor, and then I'll have to take it out, and then I'm going to have to pay the bill, and I'll be in a fix then.
Wow.
Yeah. So, that's my little rant about, what was I ranting about? Video games or Medicare costs?
So you're playing,
I don't know. I give up.
But you're playing Doom.
I'm playing Doom and having fun and avoiding life.
So today is the first time in almost 4 months my little guy got the game back. As we've talked about, he's going through a therapeutic program, including life mentors, peer mentors. So we're going to baby step into it. But we actually made, like the last couple of weeks, we've been negotiating a contract that we made him sign a contract.
That is unbreakable. Unbreakable. Excuse me for a minute.
So we'll see. And honestly, I had as Joe was getting here, I was, for the first time myself since I've gone to Saudi, I played Resident Evil 5 for about, well, how long do those mini rounds take? Like 5-6 minutes. It was halfway through one of those mini rounds, and I had to, because he can't play from like 4 to 8 is the only time he can play. So, and as you know, I didn't know. Joe told me it always seemed like it took a long time for the PS4 to update things, but boy, howdy does it.
If you don't play it for 4 months, yeah. There's a thing with Sony. If you have a PS4, you kind of know this. Even if everybody has like high-speed internet now. But even on like the highest speeds, the download time is enormously slow. It's excruciatingly slow. Like if you have like one of these big AAA games where they have a day one patch, like fresh out of the box, I'm going to play the game. Hold my beer. You cannot play the game because
the most frustrating thing.
You download a day one patch that's almost the size of the fucking game itself.
You pre-order a game, you get it the day it comes out, you run home and put it in, and it has an update. It's right. Like, wait, what?
And the update for Sony servers, for some reason, their download speeds are like 10 times slower than like your average download speed if you were to download the same file via a regular like website on your computer. It's just I think they choke back the bandwidth so that they can spread it around and kind of save a nickel here and a dime there. They don't want to pay those high bandwidth upload speeds. I don't know what they're thinking. All I know is it's a pain in the ass, and I haven't played my PlayStation 4 in about probably this longer than you haven't. I mean, I bought a game for myself, Grand Theft Auto 5, before Christmas. Have yet to open it. And my wife was away this week.
Well, yeah.
And I didn't open it still. I had the PlayStation 4
we
all
should
to
come
myself.
back tonight, tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yeah.
Oh, we got tonight.
Who needs tomorrow? I know your plans don't include me.
Oh. Hey, before we talk about The Good Place, did you see Saturday Night Live this week?
No, I did not. The Adam Driver. Well, Saturday Night Live 2 weeks ago.
Oh, was it 2 weeks
Driver?
ago? Yeah, it was pretty good. Like the undercover boss, which they did the last time, his monologue was pretty good. But he's like, I've had a big year, a couple, huge movies, the marriage. What is it?
The marriage. I watched it too. I think it's the Marriage Story.
The Marriage Story. Then that space one. And then, it was funny. He walked to the audience. He was like doing this killing time thing. And he said he's extending the monologue because there's a skit at the end of the show that is like he has to dress up as a woman, and it's either transformative or just outdated. But I'm hoping it gets cut. And he's like, hey, you look like a Star Wars fan, to a guy who looked like a Star Wars fan. He gave him an autograph. But yeah, they did the undercover boss. But he's like, yeah, so I made out with Scarlett Johansson in it, and get this big round of applause. He goes, so essentially, I also made out with Colin Jost. And it was funny because Scarlett Johansson had hosted like a few weeks ago, and she was saying, like, he was a little nervous. She's on the show this time, and it's like, if it doesn't go well, she goes, I don't know what he's worried about. Like, we need his paycheck. It was like, man, does he get shit on a lot?
I do like Colin Jost on Weekend Update and Michael Che. I love them both.
When they write jokes for each other.
Oh, it's the best.
You're going to get me killed.
Right. Okay, this is what it says. I'm sorry, I can't do this. Not because it's a bad joke, but it's the cue card's being held by a black guy. So, sorry, homeboy. Merry Christmas, you're fired.
You're going to get me killed.
Yeah.
No, it was pretty good. Now, right into TV. We're both finished watching. And how much can we talk about it? Because it just was last week. We give it a couple weeks.
Maybe, yeah. We don't have to get into the details of it. But, man, I just want to say that the journey, this show is probably one of the best written shows of all time. Very existential. And the journey that I've gone on these past 4 weeks?
Yeah.
For me, 4 weeks.
You binge watched the 52 episodes?
52 episodes, yeah. Almost a year now. It's
Jeremy Bellamy.
The Jeremy Bellamy.
The dot.
Yeah.
It broke me.
It was a good show. It was a satisfying ending. It was just well planned out, obviously well thought out from beginning to end. They didn't meander. There were no throwaway seasons.
No throwaway episodes.
Yeah, every episode was great.
And how many callbacks there were that were poignant. Even in that last episode, and I'm not giving anything away because it's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine. I was talking to Taylor today, who's in New York with his son on a philosophy kind of, junket.
Okay.
And I'm like, when you think about it, you don't have to think about it. This was a 4-season sitcom on a major network that revolved around philosophy.
Yeah.
Existential philosophy. And when one of the philosophy teachers was like, okay, we're your punches next week. We're doing the trolley exercise, and it gets messy. and then a couple episodes before then, when you see Chidi in those red cowboy boots, you're like, oh, all these little... And again, the creator, Mose, from The Office, had a 4-year plan. And there was no throwaway episodes because they knew this is how long it takes to tell a story. This is where we're going to go. So they didn't have to, like when Lost was doing good, they're like, and I remember, there was a big thing. It's like in season 2, it was going to be, I think it was going to be a 5-year show. It was going to be a 4 or 5-year show. And network says, we're doing really great, but if you don't give us another year or 2, we'll cut our losses. We'll go out on top. Wrap it up. And so that's why season 3, season 4, I don't want to say it fell off the track, but they had a storyline going. And the next week it continued, and the next week it continued. And then the week after that was a story about 2 people on the plane you had never seen before, are never referenced ever again, that are the principal whole storyline of that episode because they had to come up with
They had to fill time, yeah. It's kind of like, MASH lasted longer than the Korean War kind of thing.
By 9 years. Correction. I don't mean to do this. Conflict. Never declared war.
That's
Never
right.
declared war in Korea.
The last time we declared war was in World War II.
Now, one floor up, Korean War on a constant, near daily basis. But, one casualty to date.
Oh, my goodness.
Too soon,
Just soon enough, actually. But what are we talking about?
We're talking about Good Place. So you loved it.
I did, and I did this with Breaking Bad, where I got in like right before the last season kind of wrapped up, or actually aired. But with Good Place, I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't get into it sooner, even though I did start watching it a couple of years ago, but then I stopped. It was, it just, and it is like philosophy light. It's like intro to philosophy for basically most of America, which is dummies. But it gets you thinking about how, I like their subtle, because you have to take into account that according to this show, in the universe of the show, every truth is absolute. Like in the afterlife, all of their truths and what they deem to be good and evil are absolute truths. And the subtle digs they take at the Red Hot Chili Peppers and like just stuff that that the writers think are either below average or maybe a source of evil, It's like Hawaiian pizza.
Right.
I was watching an episode with Hawaiian pizza, and my wife just gives the finger to the screen because that's her favorite pizza. And it's like, but you see where they're coming from. Can you at least appreciate why they would think Hawaiian pizza is one of the lesser pizzas? And it's funny. It's like, why was there frozen yogurt everywhere?
Oh, that was explained.
No, I know, but
yeah, right. But
the explanation of it's like, that's because it was just a little bit bad.
I shouldn't even bring this up. I'm going to. I will be more prepared next week to talk more about the good place. When you talk about the frozen yogurt place, and I should almost call management down here, the signs of the stores and the background.
Oh yeah, yogurt.
No, the ones that like
the pun ones.
Joni loves Joni
loves tchotchkes.
Tchotchkes, and it's a portable cart sales thing that sells little
tchotchkes. Yeah,
that's on every episode. Like I can't tell you how many times we've paused it to read the different signs in the background.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, I've seen a couple of the. I wish I had some that came to mind.
But it is. That's why I shouldn't have brought it up. But,
yeah.
And so what's really interesting, and it's funny, I was up from about 4 a.m. to about 8 a.m. this morning. Got up to the bathroom, couldn't go back to sleep because we watched it last night. Last night being Friday night, we had taped it. We did the same thing. We got into it last year, just as season 3 dropped on Netflix. So we binged watched it. Coming into this season, we didn't watch the first 5 episodes, and then we watched it. And we had like 8 more episodes to go, and then we didn't realize the last episode was an hour episode with the half-hour follow-up. But it's hard to end a show, and I think they did. It's hard to end any show, but when you're ending a show like Lost, or like The Good Place, that deals with the foreverness of the afterlife, how do you end endlessness? And I think they did an amazing job.
The way they revamped the rules towards the end of the series about how, what's the good place, what's the bad place, and then how do we reconcile all this? And it's actually like a very poignant commentary on, having like almost like a, what do you want to call it? Like a parable about dying with dignity.
Right.
Right.
I think they took that head on almost.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because, and you have to think about like production wise, of course the show can only last a finite amount of time because the actors age,
Right.
You don't want to have, a Kristen Bell that looks, 10 years older than she once was, or like a Chidi with gray hair, or a dead Ted Danson, God forbid. You know what I mean? Like at some point you just have to.
Silver Fox.
I know, right?
And I think this is one of those shows where a lot of the lines, like you and I throw back and forth with Simpsons and other things that we love, that around here, around our house. I cannot tell you how many times, not a girl. Like I think not a girl is the biggest one.
Did you see? You saw the last episode?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Lots of tears.
For me, it wasn't tearful because again, I wasn't I known the show essentially intimately for about 4 weeks.
Right.
Like, so I didn't live with these characters in my mind for 4 years, but it was still, sad. And then, of course, briefly, my live viewing of The Good Place was interrupted because I had an appointment with National Grid to come during the day to replace my meter. And apparently they decided that 8:30 is during the day. So I couldn't.
We don't have the DVR anymore.
I don't have the DVR, so I had I was basically like, all right. So I was with the guy for half an hour, and then I missed it, but I caught up with it on Hulu the next day. Anyway, long story short, there were tears, but it's because I missed The Good Place live for the first half hour. So yeah, it was
so smart though. I mean, the writing on it is so smart.
Yeah, right. And actually, one thing that if television could do anything at all that is important to mankind is to inspire and to kind of like give you some sort of like hope or something to aspire to, something that sits with you to make you think about how to change the way you act and the way you perceive yourself and the way you perceive others. And
do you remember the name of the douchebag guy?
Oh no, but yeah, the guy that he wrote the book. And then did you see the clip of him on the monitor?
Yeah.
It's like, wait, so I shouldn't tell a woman to smile more, even though it would make her more attractive.
Might make her more attractive.
Really? Objectively more attractive if she smiled?
I got into Princeton on my own merits, just like my father and my grandfather before him. I took my father left me his company that was making $90 million a year, and over 20 years, I grew to $93 million a year. I worked hard. I had nothing handed to me. But no, you're right. I mean, it makes you think, and it's like, but Chidi in the philosophy thing, it's like so much of it. And the juxtaposition that here is probably one of the most educated, well-read persons on the planet, falls in love with an Arizona trash bag.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, spoilers for the first season, he still ends up in the bad place.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he lived this sort of, great, like a moderately good life, but because he was so indecisive and fear-based and couldn't get it over his own, couldn't get it out of his own way, he wasn't good enough to get into the good place.
Well, because he drove everybody around him crazy.
Yeah.
It's like I tell management, she's like, I've never been in an accident. It's like, have you looked in the mirror and seen the wrecks that you caused behind you? The wake of carnage that stretches miles, It's like, just because you swerved in time doesn't mean that the other person who didn't see you will take you almost did. But we will. We'll talk about more in a couple weeks. Because it's going to stick with me for a while. I literally was up for 4 hours last night, this morning, and fell back to sleep around 8. And it's funny because a lot of the places they took it, I thought the exact same thing, So
we'll talk about it offline.
We'll get it. But yeah, it was great. The first 3 seasons are up on Netflix. I don't know how long it takes for season 4 to get up there. Probably not that long.
See, the thing with Hulu is that it only keeps up the first or the latest 5 or 6 episodes before it goes away. So yeah,
it's great though.
Yeah, and now I'm going to move on to Schitt's Creek.
Oh,
okay. I've already into the first season. So that again, another show that's wrapping up this year. I'm just getting into now. Our friend Jim has long touted the greatness of Schitt's Creek, and it stars Chris Elliott. How am I not watching this?
And who else?
I mean, it has Eugene Levy. It has Catherine O'Hara.
Right. And we talked about that. They were both on Conan recently. And it was great.
Conan's podcast. Yeah.
Right. Listening to them talk about the show and about how I haven't seen the show, but her accent in the show and where it's come from. Mm-hmm. And now the writers over the years try to outdo each other with the speeches.
Yeah. And then, right. On. And then how great is it that the son on the show is Eugene Levy's actual son, and who's like a writer, like kind of co-producer of the show, Dan Levy. So gay, not gay, who knows?
I don't
Who cares?
know.
Oh, you haven't watched the show.
Well,
when you watch the show, you'll ask the question.
I will ask the question. It's like he was blowing me. I'm not the gay one. Wait. What? So no, and that every time I look at Netflix and that comes up, I'm like, my parents love it.
It's a good show.
Speaking of my parents, my wife had just sent me a meme. Fox News has done to our parents what our parents thought video games were going to do to us. And I'm like, wow, that is good. So Netflix, Shit Creek and the good one. Good place. You got a parenting tip?
I would have to say make your kids eat foods that they don't like to eat at a young age. Get them to eat the foods that have them. Just sit with them. Be more involved in the food that you provide to your children. Don't let them rule the roost. Even if they have allergies or if they have texture issues or whatever, you work around the allergies and you fight through the texture issues because it will murder you in the later years. Trying to find I can't go anywhere to eat with my family anymore because of the food allergy, bummer. But also because even if we get foods that aren't going to cause a minor allergic reaction or a major one, we're still limited because of the sensitive issues. And they're also so they're just so set in their ways. They're only going to eat macaroni and cheese. They're only going to eat chicken nuggets with French fries. And their diet, I'm afraid they're going to die. I'm afraid literally my children are going to die a younger version of themselves. They're going to go to the good place a lot sooner because
Will it be the good place or because they lost points because they haven't eaten enough vegetables?
Well, see, when you die young, you don't earn that many negative points.
Okay, all right. Well,
by the way, a good call on them to not put children in anything on that show. There were no
now
children.
that you say that, I've never done it.
No children, and very few. They have older people, but
because you think about that, Casper the Ghost. When you do the math,
right.
like that's
right.
That's fucking horrible, man. It's fucking horrible. No, I like that.
Yeah, and no children. But that reminds me of.
Wait, hold on, let me just think of that term for a second.
No children. Right.
Let me just have a moment.
You're in your good place. But that reminds me of the line from Defending Your Life with Rip Torn. It's like, Albert Brooks asks, "Where are the children?" And he says, when children, when the life of a child ends, they automatically move on. Isn't that nice? Another great movie. That you want to see me weep? You want to see me cry? My favorite, Defending Your Life. God damn it!
Favorite thing about that movie.
Any movie with life in the title,
right?
God damn it!
Favorite thing about that movie. The script came in; it was going to be like 4 hours long, and the networks, the studio, tells Albert Einstein that he has to shorten it, and he sent it back in like
with smaller font,
and got one note back from the studio.
Nice try.
Like literally a post-it note. Script got sent back. Nice try. Yeah, he can't do a script that's under like 300 pages.
And thank God for that.
He's great. He is just. Speaking of movies, Janet from The Good Place,
Darcy Carden
remake of League of Their Own, and I will say Torn. And I don't mean Rip Torn. It's one of my favorite movies. Talk about not being able to cry at a movie. I absolutely love that movie. Tear up
used to
every
be
single
my
time.
Playground.
And
used to be.
He what gets me is that the scene at the end when they're in the Baseball Hall of Fame and seriously, John Lovitz,
yeah.
And I don't say this kidding. A lot of people really were expecting, or at least really hoping, he was only in this movie for 10 minutes, that he was going to get a Best Supporting Actor nomination. He doesn't open his fucking mouth in that movie. That isn't awesome. Like every syllable out of his, and for years until now, hey cowgirls, see the grass? Don't eat it. Okay, here's how it works. The train moves, not the station. If you want to play baseball, you got to get on the train.
I got to rewatch that movie. I watched it a ton when it was on HBO in the 90s, and I haven't seen it since. And I really need to now. I'm inspired to go. See, you're talking about inspiring people. I'm going to go inspire myself to watch that movie again. And then, by the way, play-by-play announcer, Squiggy.
Oh, right. Wow. That was it's and they were talking to the woman who plays Janet. You would know her real name,
Darcy Carden.
Like, what are some of the movies she's going to watch? And she's like, she loves. If you build it, they will come.
Oh yeah, A Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams. Yeah, I forgot that.
It took place in Fenway.
Ray Liotta's maybe my favorite thing that Ray Liotta's done.
Hey, Dad.
You want
to have a catch?
Like just, God, I love this game. It's like,
yeah.
And it's like, I can't with those two movies. But anyways, so my parent, it's a good. So as far as your parenting tip, I won't mention his name, but a longtime F&H brother had dietary issues akin to your kids. Now, our kids, because my kids, same thing. It's hard because my kids have food allergies. And we have trouble eating at restaurants. Not so much of the food allergies or the texture. It's just they're assholes and are public embarrassment and we get thrown out of places. So everybody has their own battles and those are ours. But seriously, I had a friend up until his late 30s, early 40s. He had the same kind of food, issues. And his stemmed from he was sick as a child and touch and go whether he was going to make it. And so his parents treated every meal like his last meal. And for his whole life, it was frozen pizza and French fries. This guy, really good fucking athlete. I mean, a really good fucking athlete. Always in good shape. But he did. And he was embarrassed to eat in public when he got older because he ate like a petulant child. And it wasn't until he late 30s. I don't think he was 40 yet.
Let me guess. Met a woman
who basically said, as a condition of them moving in and moving forward, you're going to eat one new food a week. That's it. And like a spoiled child, he hated some vegetables. And this is coming from me. This is coming, and Joe knows me, and the four people who listen to this podcast who've eaten with me know I've been a vegetarian since '89. I can't count the number of times I've eaten broccoli on more than one hand.
But yet you serve us celery sticks each and every podcast.
Yeah, look, we got all the fruit groups. We got cheese dip, chocolate, nut butter cookies, and soft drinks.
And orange.
And orange, right.
Orange is a food group, apparently.
So, people like...
Purple's a fruit.
So I have my own fruit issues. But yeah, my buddy... And he has a much more healthy palate now, but it's like so our youngest kid, before we left LA, he was 5. 75 to 80% of his food intake was bean burritos from Taco Bell, specifically, nowhere else. Recently, I had lunch with a restaurateur, a very successful entrepreneurial who owns many restaurants, who has worked on the higher echelon for companies like Yum Yum Foods that owns Taco Bell, and he worked for Burger King, he worked for Wampan. You go down, and he will tell you that that's probably the most healthy food you can possibly get is bean burritos from Taco Bell. He's like, and when I was joking about my kid that's all he eats, and even to today, that will be his meal twice a week. It's like it's 100% protein.
Right. I was going to say it's super high in protein.
It's the best thing. He goes, yeah. It's like the tortilla. It's like a little corn oil, but that's not bad. It's actual real cheese. It's not processed cheese. They absolutely lose whole cheese on it. So
for now.
But anyway, so no, I hear you with the food things, but it's tough.
I'm taking time away from your parenting tip.
My parenting tip of the week is cut the shit with black and white, with gray areas. Put everything in black and white. So my kid's getting his video games back on a probationary period. We made him sign a contract that over the course of a few weeks negotiate. Well, not a lot of negotiation. Here are the rules. We let him have a couple opinions on a couple things that he actually made. You know what? That's fair. We had, I had proposed to treatment. Let's talk about it as a family. Let's talk about it as a family with a therapist. He had some things that we're like, okay, that's a fair request. One of the rules is I don't have it in front of me. He cannot be better at any Resident Evil, Batman, or Star Wars themed games. Like that's one of the rules I made him sign. But
better than you.
But better than me. He couldn't be better than me. But I did. Because I said it's not fair when an employee doesn't know what his review is going to be on. It's like, you didn't mop the floor well. I'm an accountant. I didn't know that I was going to be judged on mopping the floor. Same thing. I can't say, hey, you didn't follow the rules if the rules aren't black and white. No gray areas. What's interesting is this has been fucking hard for all of us. As Joe knows, there's been some real meltdowns and all this stuff. But a few weeks ago, he had said, this is the first time. He's only 12, but because this is the first time you guys said this is going to happen, and it happened. And I wasn't able to negotiate, wind my way out. He didn't say it like that, but he's like, and I said, yeah, and I hope this sticks with you, buddy. I hope 5-6 years from now, when you want to borrow the car and we say, if you're not home by 11, you don't get the car next weekend. And if you do it again, you won't get the car for 6 months. You'll remember, hey, I get away with a lot of shit, but.
So lay out the rules and then follow through.
Yeah.
Okay.
As hard as it is.
It is hard, man.
Because I haven't played the games. And I don't want to actually. Like, now that they're back, I'm like, yeah, I've been more productive. It's like, and I got to model better parenting. But as far as my parenting tip, it's cut out the gray. You make it black and white. Here it is. When you can. I mean, life isn't always like that. But when
with sex talk, that's what I'm going to do.
Right. It's like, we are going to do it this and this way. And
missionary only.
And if you're here, that'd be great. Anyways, that's all I got.
Great. That's all I got. Well, thanks for listening to the Carnival Personnel Podcast. And thanks for sticking around for another 2 hours, because I'm certainly not editing anything of this out. And that just means more value for you, the customer. We appreciate your phone call. Your call is important to us. If you could just hang on and take a survey at the end of the call, at the end of the podcast, we'd appreciate it. Follow us at Carnival Podcast on our social media or whatever the fuck. I don't give a shit. And those are dead people. Those are dead people laughing.
Dead people.
Yeah. Those are dead people laughing. Anyways, who's not laughing? Our audience. And that, my friend, is something to don't forget to do. Oh, man, I blew the line.
You're lying, George. You're lying.
I couldn't phrase it properly. Anyways, don't forget